What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the First Class Lacrosse podcast. I'm Deemer Class, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Dunn. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Deemer. It's good to be back together. We were working hard to get a guest on this week, but some conflicting schedules, so it's the two of us again.
Our audience is stuck just with us two getting on our soapbox about a couple topics here. But like we said in the beginning of the season, we have a lot of these conversations, and it's awesome to have a place to share what we're seeing, what we're thinking. And if that helps a couple people along the way, I think that's what it's always been about.
Well, Deemer, the funny thing with these a little bit too is you and I communicate so much over text or group Zoom, Google Meet calls or Slack or whatnot. And that I feel like sometimes these podcasts are you and I just getting our ideas out there to each other in a non-business task setting.
Yeah, a lot of blocking and tackling during each week. At some point, I feel like we could stick one of our AI agents that have been sitting in all our calls. They could be the guest one week and see what that spits out.
I've been booting them recently from all of our meetings.
No, I love it. Well, hey, one thing that kind of kicking off the show, I've been really feeling like this season of college lacrosse has been awesome to see more parity. A couple new teams, emerging in the top 10 for men's and women's, as well as, just seeing some more midweek upsets, different teams knocking off traditional powerhouses. And I think it's been awesome for the sport. So it's been a fun season to watch. I know we both were chatting, like sometimes it's hard to watch all the games that are coming through. We're catching up, you're in season. But what do you think so far?
Yeah, I think you said it. We made last year, we tried to cover the season more on our podcast in the spring. And I think both of us just felt stretched pretty thin trying to, we had other things going on coaching over the weekend, and we try to catch up on all the games. So I haven't been following as intensely, but it kind of brought up just following it more as like a fan and tracking scores and updates on social media and watching the games I can. It's hard to get a pulse on who really is the dominant team. And you've seen, Notre Dame's obviously up there on the men's side in the polls, but Richmond's been a team that has been, you could kind of stack Notre Dame and Richmond 1 and 2. Which is not, traditionally you see, Notre Dame up there, Maryland up there, Syracuse up there, Duke or UNC or Virginia in certain years, and Princeton. And now to see Richmond as number 2 in the media poll I'm looking at, and Harvard is number 3. It's pretty cool just to see how these teams that have been good, but not traditionally that, top 5 team up there. But everybody I talk to kind of says like, I've heard from multiple people, Richmond is the real deal. And we're talking college coaches that have played against them and like they are good, which is pretty cool because they've been knocking at the door for a while. And we obviously love, my brother went there and Coach Chamati is a friend of ours and Coach Richards, and they've done a great job there. So it's been cool to see that parity you're talking about, but I definitely want to dig in a little at the back half of the season on some of these teams and kind of see what is making them have so much success.
Yeah, lacrosse Twitter was fired up this week when Notre Dame and Richmond announced that the game will be on ACC Network, I believe. So there will be a stream, there will be a broadcast of that game. I think it's April 4th. So that will be exciting. On the women's side too, Stanford, number 2, is probably going to be number 1 after this week. Northwestern had a big overtime win. Madison Taylor scored a huge game-winning goal against UNC at UNC, snaps UNC's 31-game win streak. That was an awesome game to watch midweek after I actually was at the North Carolina Boston College game, and they rolled. And so there's more parity. Navy's in the top 5 for women's. It's been a fun season, for both. So excited to see. We're only a month out from conference tournaments pretty much. So we're rolling along here.
The season flies by. I saw, and I'm going to mess the number up and this is bad on me, But what was the number of hundred of wins that Coach Tim Chaw got recently?
Wow, put me on
Was
the
it
spot
was
there.
it 600?
I think it was 600.
I saw it.
I don't think it was 500. I think it was 600.
Yeah, so impressive.
Yeah, and
So
we're
impre
even if we're gonna guess, I'd say more likely to be 700 than 500 because that's how amazing that she's done. So I'll cover myself there.
Well, we'll just edit this out if we're wrong, so
um,
well, quickly,
awesome.
Deemer, just while we're on the topic, because I think it's one everybody likes to complain about, including us in the past, of how do you get it easier to watch college lacrosse? And I know the timing people want to say, like, you want the games not to be all at the same time, but I have ESPN Plus, I have Big Ten Network Plus. I had to get like sometimes I think I got like a trial, so like a Fox One subscription because I had to get like an actual cable to watch the actual Big Ten network because I have like the subscriptions and all that. So I feel like anybody that wants to watch and follow college lacrosse can commiserate with the number of logins and platforms you need to get on. If anybody in our audience has more expertise in this domain than we do, please contribute some ideas as to how we can solve the problem of being able to watch all of college lacrosse very easily.
Yeah, if you want to go down the media rights rabbit hole of figuring that out and cost of production, that's typically a lane I try to stay away from because it doesn't really interest me. What does interest me though is how can you create a command center where you can get a lot of these games up and watching. So you might need 2 to 3 computers. You might need 1 to 2 TVs in the same room, and then you're getting your setup dialed to where you're watching Big Ten Network, you're watching something from YouTube TV, you've got maybe a split screen on ESPN Plus going on YouTube TV, which I do like about YouTube TV. You can get multiple screens in the action. But sometimes you get held up because maybe you don't have ACC network plugged in, like there's some roadblocks here, but I do think there's a way to get your at-home command center. I just find it hard like when it's midday in April and you want to be out and about and the
Yeah,
sun
yeah,
finally starts coming out, you're going to sit in front of this command center all day, like probably not for me.
totally, totally. All right, so kind of moving on to more of the meat of our episode today. Quick highlight of things we wanted to talk about. One is kind of talking about we focus a lot on the 1% in the lacrosse community of like the top players, and maybe it's even less than 1% of the players that are kind of going through and going to be top recruits, going to play at the top D1 programs, and the big names everybody knows. But the reality, Deemer, is that 99+% of lacrosse players are not that group, and they definitely get an outsized proportion of the attention there. We wanted to focus a little bit on that journey today because that is most of the people that play the sport. Most of our audience are going to be in that subset that is not the group that is getting invited to every single event, that is getting recruited by all the schools they want to, that gets to go to those schools, that shows up in the media, as in the stat sheet, is the All-American, all of that. So, Deemer, I don't know, around that type of player and experience, let's dig into that journey a little bit and why, one, what we see in that journey, what we hear from parents, and two, why we are even doing what we're doing with First Class Lacrosse to try to create some opportunities for that player.
Yeah, it's a great topic and one I'm excited to reflect on, and kind of funny because this was something that, an idea that came from one of our longtime supporters and listeners, and it's great to chat about. At the same time, a couple days ago, I was scrolling TikTok, which I don't do as much, but is some funny stuff on there. This girl is like talking about this was my high school lacrosse experience, and she goes on this hilarious rant about going to Delaware and playing 4 games a day and then being absolutely exhausted, passing out in the car ride home, waking up to McDonald's drive-through, going home, then going to train, going to midweek practice in the summer, and then going back and doing it all over again and going back and forth to basically, you know, DE Turf, New Egypt, you name it, like all these classic tournament sites. And I also think back, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. One of my biggest regrets from high school was missing the Taylor Swift concert going into sophomore year because we had to drive up to Rutgers MVP on
Oh,
Friday, and
yeah.
the concert was a Thursday night, and it was like the hang of the year. Like, everyone talked about that concert for the remainder of the year, and I had so much FOMO that I chose not to go to this concert.
I didn't go to the concert either, by the way.
You didn't.
No.
I would have thought you were there. This is where all of our friends met everyone in Baltimore
Yeah,
in high school.
that's hilarious you just thought of that. I remember that concert and not going. I couldn't remember why I didn't go, but now this seems to be more imprinted in your mind than mine,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
remember that being a big deal, and anybody that remembers high school at all, this was freshman year when you first like, everybody's met a lot of new people at this thing for whatever reason, and everybody came out of it with, like, new friendships, and I just remember being like, I guess I missed it."
I mean, it's funny to think about because I think it kind of speaks to this idea that when you're going through this experience of playing sports, like, you think that these things they're the biggest thing in your life. Like, they're like right in front of you. It feels like your future rides on it, and all these things. But then when you like zoom out or you gain some perspective when you go out, it's like, I mean, you're in middle school, you're in high school, like these are the times that you do wanna be with your friends, doing the things that you love, and, it's getting harder, I think, for people to really appreciate that, and more people are sacrificing a lot to, you know, achieve their goals in the sport, but it's kind of funny in retrospect to think about some of that, and hey, like, we didn't know, like, you've talked about it on the show before, like, we didn't know, were we gonna get to play D1? Like, we had no idea. Like, my parents hadn't gone through it before. They didn't play sports in college. Like, we were just, like, kinda moving along this journey and working through it, and working through these ups and downs, kinda wondering, "Well, what's next?"
Well, and let me flip the perspective here too, because I think there's a sweet spot, right, of committing so much that you missed your whole life and making it all about this thing that one day you never even play in college or you quit in college or whatever. Um, but I think the flip side of that, and we deal with this here. So I'm in Dallas at Highland Park, and before Coach Prester got here a few years ago, the team would break in the middle of the year and go on spring break. Everybody would leave for a week, and it's pretty common here. And I've actually heard a lot of places that are not the typical like Northeast, and I don't want to say just the Northeast, but a lot of these more stronger, more sustained programs, these teams will break in the middle of the year and the kids will go on spring break for 5 days. We never went on spring break. I haven't gone on spring break since middle school, if I even went then, probably didn't, because of lacrosse or a sport you play. Like, you just miss things. And so I was explaining to our kids because they're all like, oh, all of their other friends go that don't play. And there are kids that I know that quit or didn't try out because they wanted to go on spring break. That was like the main reason. They're like, I don't want to play lacrosse this year because I don't want to miss that trip. Um, but the point is, yeah, you're missing something. But I think that's part of the value of sports too, is that things when you miss things at all or you make sacrifices, they're worth more and you're making a decision that I'm prioritizing this team event, this group over what I would like to do in that scenario. Now, I do think there's a sweet spot because to your point, I know you and I both talk about the ability to not just put our head down and wake up 10 years later and be like, man, I didn't enjoy anything that we were doing. But on the flip side of that, it's one of the value of sports of you're training yourself to say, like, I'm willing to pass up something that I know would be awesome and a lot of fun right now because I've committed to be a part of this group. And what they need from me is to be present with them, which might not be the fun thing at the moment, but it's pretty meaningful to show that commitment to that group.
Yeah, and I mean, that is something that I think is with this journey component, there is a lot of sacrifice, and the reward on the other side, and this is where you get into things like process over outcome. Like, you don't always see that reward right away. Like, you can, kind of put in these blood, sweat, and tears to make a team, or you don't make it, or you put in these blood, sweat, and tears, 3 years of high school, and you're hoping that, hey, senior year, it all pays off and you have like this great year. But what if you don't? But if you're playing beyond if you're playing beyond high school, okay, well, back to work, new experience, fresh start, and you kind of do it all over again. And I think this is what, again, hopefully when players' careers do end, and I would imagine as a parent, when you look back and you watch your son or daughter, and then their experience playing is done from a competitive standpoint. Hopefully they've learned lessons along the way. Hopefully they look back with appreciation for everything that they put into it. And I think hopefully they're better, set up to then take on the next challenges of life. And I remember, like, our coaches in high school and college would talk about things like being a better brother and son and father, hopefully someday, because you learn these lessons of sacrifice and accountability and resilience that now you have to go apply elsewhere. You're starting a business. You know, you're working for the man, you're working for the woman, like you're finding your way as an analyst, and you're going to draw on this student athlete experience, and it is a grind, but also I think there's a lot that can be gained from doing this, and that's why a lot of people want to hire athletes.
Totally. It's an environment that you don't get if you don't play a competitive sport, and I just mean competitive at not doesn't have to be the top elite team, but just something you're committed to. You're going to commit to it, and you're gonna do your best, and you're gonna try to win as a group and a team, and you're putting effort into it. You're not gonna get you're not gonna get held accountable that frequently. You're not gonna experience, like, discipline that frequently. You're not gonna get disappointed all that often. You might, but the disappointments are gonna be from life, which are can be way more challenging than just losing a game, which feels like the biggest deal, or not starting, which feels like a huge deal. But when you zoom out, you get these, like, exposures to these challenges and these skills that translate so much beyond sport. And Deemer, I think the one that I know is really important to you that you didn't hit there, that people get out of this, is the relationships. I mean, all of my, I don't say all, but almost all of my best friends now, I have been on a team with at some point. I have played against or played in the same league with or coached with or something along. There's some thread of sport that has brought that relationship together initially. And maybe it was just for 2 years in high school or 1 year in high school, and that it didn't work out for them, and I took a different path. But those people are all of my best friends. And I think I look at, the all the players I've coached, like, I see the relationships that form through it. Um, it's one of the greatest parts of sport too, is you get to know somebody in a different lens than if, like, I'll speak for, people in college age or older, than if you just went out and they were, social friends or something. You get to see a totally different side of somebody than just catching them Thursday night, Saturday afternoon in those environments.
Yeah, and I think back to even like the opening part of this segment, like when we're talking about the 99%, like there's a lot that you're doing and experiencing where the immediate tangible, like, feedback is not getting, like, the highlights, the reels, the accolades. you know Only one team in each division wins a championship at the end of the year. So the all these other things that we're talking about, the ups, the downs, the growth, the friendships, that is the stuff that is going to last forever. And I think that's the stuff too that has really motivated you and I to be on this journey together, and to coach and train and make content. And you know it's always cool for me too to see, like, again, different people who maybe even stopped playing in high school, but they're fans of lacrosse. like they love the game, they still follow, maybe they played club in college. So, it's also a good reminder too that, like, even if you don't get to exactly where you're saying that you're trying to go or hoping to go, but by making all this investment, like, there's still so much that you gain and you get to be a part of this community and have that touch point, and you'll probably be coaching your kids someday, or you'll be involved or volunteering or giving back. And I think that's a really special part of this that, hopefully is not lost over time.
I think zooming out there just kind of to make sure I hit the point that I know we were kind of talking about is although most people, at least at the start, aspire to be at the top, not everybody. Some people are more realistic and say, I just love playing it. But a lot of people do at some point, whether it's early and then they figure out it's maybe not working, they aspire to be in that top group. If you don't end up there, because statistically, the vast majority of people won't. I think the point is it's still there's the experience and the journey is where like all of the value really is. And I would say even for the people that get there, that are lucky enough to get to those spots, they realize that getting there was cool, but the value is really what they learned along the way, and a lot of the relationships that they've made through it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good segue to, one of the next things that, we wanted to talk about, where there's this, craze right now that keeps evolving around youth sports, not just lacrosse. There's more private equity investment, pouring into all youth sports. LinkedIn is littered with posts around how big the industry is and these different things. And, I think too, like, this is a good chance to talk about some of that and connect those dots, but also kind of reestablish, what our purpose is, and our mission is, and bring some of that to light. And you and I met in December, to talk through that more, kind of recap the year, and we said our purpose at First Class Lacrosse is to positively impact people so they can positively impact other people. What does that mean to you?
It was trying to put words together that felt right, that I think you and I both knew subconsciously what we were doing, and why we were doing it. I think we started 8, 9 years ago of feeling like we got these great coaching experience from college. We both thought we should do finance or something along those lines, realized it wasn't, quite what we were most passionate about, and that we wanted to take the coaching experience we got from college and apply it at younger ages to a broader group. And that was our goal, is to spread this great knowledge we thought in coaching ability that was siloed to programs and take it broadly. And as we did that, I think we realized what we were doing. Like, one, you and I took it really seriously and really loved it. And over time, what we were obsessed with the details of teaching lacrosse early on. I felt like, for me at least, the first couple years, I was so obsessed with trying to figure out just lacrosse stuff, how to teach it better, all of that. And I still am. But I think the reason we're still doing it, and I know as I've gotten older, I keep asking myself, like, what am I doing? Is this what I want to be doing? Am I, I think like a lot of us do, like, what's the meaning of what we're doing? And it's not just about teaching somebody lacrosse. It's lacrosse coaching is a vehicle to impact people, because I think through my life, my coaches have had the greatest impact on me of anybody outside my family, and a few other people too. But coaches are people that I've always looked up to and have learned so much from. So, like, why are we investing our time and doing this for something else? I think it's really meaningful for us to have the opportunity to impact other people. And then, why do you want to impact other people? Well, somebody impacted me, and now I'm trying through that experience trying to impact somebody else. My hope is that somebody remembers working with us in some capacity and goes, "Oh, that had a tremendous impact. I now want to do that for somebody else." And I think that, it was an attempt at trying to make sense of what we're doing from a deeper level of why are we choosing to do this, and is this meaningful enough to continue doing? Because I think you and I are both like, well, we're not just doing lacrosse clinics for forever. That doesn't sound like much, but it became a lot more than that, which is I think is why we're still doing it and why we're excited about doing this for a long time.
Yeah, and I think it's reflective of what we try to do, and I remember too, like in those early years of, figuring it out as well, and we're still figuring it out. The term like grow the game gets thrown around a lot. Grow the game, grow the game. What does that mean? Who are people speaking to? Like, and I never felt that that was something that necessarily was like a tagline that what was our mission. I think that this is something that feels like more authentic to who we are, and maybe some of what we do causes the game to grow in some areas. Maybe it's spreading it. Maybe it's, again, like, helping some people go like, deeper into their craft, and but I think, when you also hopefully, zoom out like times from now, like there's deep impact, and I think as a coach, like even on teams, like you're not going to get through to everyone, you're not going to be for everyone, but hopefully the people that come through what we're doing, and what they're investing time and money and resources into, like hopefully that we can help them be better players, better people, and positively impact their experience in the sport, and I think beyond the sport, how they go about, trying to pursue what they want to pursue.
You think about where we're sitting in the current landscape of lacrosse. You mentioned that a little bit at the beginning, right? There's private equity money coming into youth sports like crazy. People are talking about this, and by the way, a lot of this stuff is not unique to lacrosse. We're seeing it in lacrosse, but it's not unique to lacrosse. Of this private equity coming in, kind of consolidating groups and professionalizing youth sports to a degree. You're seeing the growth of club and these events over the last 10 to 15 years, where Deemer, when you and I were coming up, club was in the summer only. You played 3 club tournaments. You went to maybe 1 or 2 camps or showcases, and then you played spring lacrosse. Fall lacrosse had just started a little bit of one tournament. That's totally changed in the last 10 to 15 years. So, Deemer, when you assess the current landscape of where we're at in youth sports and lacrosse, how should a family approach their lacrosse experience? They have a lot of opportunities and thoughts of where to put their time and their money, quite frankly. And I think for a lot of families, they're struggling to figure out what's worth it. They're budgeting, they're trying to allocate time, resources, money, energy. Travel is a big piece of it. So, how should a family think about approaching this landscape?
Yeah, it's a hard question, and I do think it's changing, and I'm very curious to see what things look like 5 to 10 years from now as more consolidation hits. I mean, I think one example, where we grew up, a lot of the rec leagues have died, and I think a lot of that has evolved. So like people's entry into the sport has become, I think, a bit more challenging. Also what we've seen is, kind of your classic skill camp or get better camp. That's been harder um, to facilitate, I think, for a lot of groups, because I think how the landscape has evolved is, elite, 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 which again, we participate in that. But, finding these gaps of, well, how do you build into that? When's the time to opt into that? When should you travel more? I think those are all good questions. I think, for a family, it's I always think too of when we had Jerry Byrne speak at our parent panel. I always thought he had a great line around, parents are the stewards and stewardesses of their child's journey. And I think, one thing he mentioned with his son, when he was going through the process, was he wanted to kind of limit enough to where he was asking for more. like he was excited to do more, he wanted to do more, and they could go maybe look for that one more camp or that one more opportunity. Whereas I would just probably imagine, and I think what we've seen in the last 5 years of even getting more into the event space is I think a lot of people are signing up for a lot, and then instead of, "Hey, can I do one more thing?" It's more like peeling back, like, "Well, what can I get out of? What should I do less of? What can I cut? What can I get my money back for?" And I think that, like, that's where, again, not saying that you just there's no reason that you should do that, like, people get sucked into that, it's hard, but that's kinda where I think that's what you'd wanna try and avoid. And I think until you, like, there's different ages and stages of, like, how, much your son or daughter's, like, getting interested in this game. There's a lot you can do, and, like, fill in the gaps and pull stuff off the internet and, like, find other kids locally to go shoot around with, and maybe you have to facilitate some pickup games and some 3 by and, get 5 buddies out to the field. Like, think about how many times, like, we went over to TJ's backyard and we were, like, just playing games, like, I think that's stuff that, you know, people might have to work at more so that, because otherwise the alternative is just going to play more and more travel ball every weekend.
Shout out TJ's backyard. So I think one thing this brings me to is and I have a question for you off of this, is kind of what's the point? And I don't know if it's even worth thinking about too early, but I know some people do. So, and what I mean by that is if you're in 6th grade, some thought process like, I know the recruiting isn't happening now because, by the way, recruiting at the very earliest is really happening your sophomore year, but kind of going in the summer going into your junior year. So a little bit, Deemer, we've talked about it before. A little bit, college coaches, the top ones, will start to aggregate a feel for a class in their sophomore year, but the summer going into your junior year is where they really formulate this list. And obviously, July 1st for academies and September 1st for the rest of D1 can start to reach out and all of that. So working back from that timeline. So recruiting is not happening in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, really 10th grade. It used to, years ago, it used to happen earlier. So anybody that thinks, just to clarify, there's not active recruiting happening. But the other thing we hear is from parents is, I know they're not getting recruited, but it's almost like, this, I've heard this analogy before. It's like the stock market. You want to get in early so that you get into the first event and maybe you get into the next one and the next one, or you want to play on the best team. So you play on the team early so that if you're on the team as a 6th grader, by the time you're an 10th grader, you're still on that team, which is, in a way, it's logical. I can understand that approach where it's like, well, if all we do is train and play locally and play multiple sports and I don't go to this travel team as a 7th grader, well, when 9th grade rolls around, how will I get on one of those teams or one of those events? How would you advise somebody that's pitching that to you at an early age to how to think about their path?
Well, I can understand too, like, the other thing, kind of going off that of, like, getting in early per se, like, I can understand that, okay, if sophomore fall, winter, and then rising junior summer, you're really getting those first and important evaluations, with your club team. I could understand, freshman year, 8th grade, like, hey, it is around the horizon of choosing, who you're trying out for, and, like, finding those coaching staffs and groups that, like, you trust and you feel like they can be, whether it's a mentor or help, facilitate the process for you. I think, like, that makes sense to me, when you're, like, working through that process. Now, like, younger, I think you're trying to find these playing opportunities, and so, like, you're kinda testing out, like, your level. Okay, you make this national team, or you get a write up at this, and, like, 7th grader, 8th grader, like, what does it mean? There are data points along the way, but I do think, like, people have to keep looking back and saying, "Okay, well, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it just what is going to be the best for your son or daughter of like the path that you're going to go on to where when they get to sophomore, junior, senior year, they're making an impact on their high school. They're making an impact on their club. And back to our 1% and 99% discussion, like those top players, like they really just kind of rise to those spots. Like you can't always predict, like even as youth sports like professionalizes, there's more and more research that's coming out that these journeys of people who are later performers, top performers later in life is because they've had a range of experiences. They haven't been like funneled always into this perfect path of development. And I think that's just important to know, important to like as this data's coming out, maybe those are good affirming things for a family to where, hey, like it kind of looks like this. It's not gonna be this perfect, stock market move. Like, you look at the stock market, boom, it whipsaws, like, up and down, So, I don't know if that answers your question, but, um, what it does make me think about is the analogy of when we played middle school basketball. I don't know if you were in the same league or not, but when I played for Carroll Manor, if you made the travel team, you were required to play in-house. And so when we played in-house, like that was your time. Like if you made the A team on travel team, like that was your time to score 30 points and like learn how to be the guy. And then I remember when I played travel, I was a nervous Nelly. Like I would take like 2 shots a game. I was so worried about missing. And like Bob Libertini was like trying to get that out of me. And my mom's like, you gotta shoot more, you gotta shoot more. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. But it came from a place of like, she was like, you're timid out there. Like you need to be more aggressive. And I think that's something that people probably don't always appreciate enough is that when you do all these elite events and you do all these elite teams, like those top alphas, like they end up dominating. And then where does that leave the bottom 15 kids? Less touches, disgruntled around playing time, and you don't get the experience of when the play is on the line, it's time to take my shot or I got to make something happen. And so I just think like people discount the experience of that too much of how do you learn to be the guy or the girl on your team. And that's where it's okay to do more local stuff and play these multiple sports because hopefully you get a taste of those experiences that when you do find your sport or your lane, you're going to actually have some experience of making that happen when your time comes.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from you really is there's a lot of value in making the most of a lot of these different opportunities that sometimes is not seen. Like it's not zero value, right? So to the earlier point of being on the best team and doing these things where you're early on, you're on the national team, you're whatever. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and there is some value there. That we're not sitting here saying like that's stupid and worthless, all this stuff. There is value to that. But there's also a lot of value that gets undervalued in not being on that team, but being the best player. And it might even be a different sport, or maybe not the best player, but just more involved to have a different role than you might. I relate to that. My sophomore year in high school, I got cut from varsity basketball. It's the last cut, and I got put on JV, and I was pretty bummed. And making varsity as a sophomore probably shouldn't have expected it necessarily, but I thought I could have made it. I got put on JV, and the coach said, "We think you'd be better served having a primary role in JV, being a leader, and like, you know, all this stuff." Coach Tavalli said this, and so I thought it was like whatever. And so halfway through the season, I'm kind of playing, deferring a lot, playing defense, getting rebounds, passing. He pulls me in his office at school and was like, "Hey, we put you on JV so that you could you know, learn how to be more assertive with the ball, learn how to take more of a leadership role, and you're kind of just playing the same role that you would have played for us on varsity right now." And I was like, "Oh, like I that you said that, but I kind of thought you were just saying that to me." It's like we need you to develop those skills because when you're a junior and senior, like we're gonna need you to be able to do that. And I was like, okay. And if I was on varsity that year, I would have ridden the bench unless we're blowing a team out. I would have been a practice player. I would have done all those other things. But I got to get practice going against maybe lesser talent, but having a totally different mindset and having a totally different skill set. And so I would say like the lesson that I learned from that and many other times is there's value and opportunity to be learned in almost any experience we face. So rather than sulk about the one you didn't get, find the value and opportunity in the path that you have, because there's plenty there.
Even hearing that too, it makes me think about the college transfer portal. Now it's easier than ever to transfer, so like if you get recruited somewhere and it's not going how you want it, or you're not connecting with the team or the coaches, you can just enter the portal and you make that decision. Do I want to stick it out, or do I enter the portal and go somewhere else? And I think it works in all ways. Like, it could be the right move to enter the portal, go to this other school, and then you crush it there. And you're going to be like so happy that you moved. But at the same time, the grass isn't always greener. And like you could go somewhere and transfer and then you still don't play. So like you just kind of have to live with those decisions. I think when it comes to, you know, club and high school, same thing. Like you could go to a prep school thinking that you got recruited to this prep school, and then you go and you don't play. So then you're faced with that decision. Are you that good? Are you not that good? Do you want to transfer to the next school? Do you want to go back to your local school? It's a challenge. Same thing with club. You go to this club team, you try out, you make the team. They tell you that, hey, we need that fifth attackman. We think you can kind of be that spot, but then you have potential to work up. And then they just don't really play you when you go to these tournaments. So, hey, you're paying a lot of money now to go to these tournaments and not play. What's the right answer? Like, should you just move teams to get on a team where, at least if you're going somewhere for a weekend, like, you're playing more? Like, there's a lot of decisions here that, you end up facing. And I just, without saying like there's one answer, because I don't think there is. It's just probably tying back to like what you said. Like, you kind of have to make the most and learn and grow from every situation that you're dealt with. And then hopefully, I think you can keep navigating and, doing what you think is right, and working through your thought process and your logic. And as parents, helping your sons and daughter doing that, because they're all ultimately the ones like that have to take that ownership of the experience at some point. Like, they have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, am I doing the things? Am I good enough? I think it's all stuff on the table that is just challenging.
Yeah, and to wrap this kind of thought stream up here, there's one piece of kind of tactical call it advice that I like, and it's from I've heard it from people doing creative work, and because I do think with some of these it feels like there's infinite choices, and the idea is really that constraints empower creativity, which sounds like uh paradoxical almost, basically saying, so for example, it would be like if you have a million choices, um it's hard to attack the problem head on. So if you were like, hey, I'm on this club team, well, I could talk to the coach and figure out, I could work harder, I could go shop around to a lot of other clubs, I could do you have so many choices you could do. So if you could say, like, well, you know what? No matter what, I'm spending 2 years on this club team, unless I get cut or unless it's really bad, whatever. So now you've constrained the realm of possibilities. So now you're going to find solutions within those constraints. And people talk about it like songwriters talk about it. Hey, we're only using these two instruments to write this. So that's whatever, maybe be better with four, but like we're going to start with these two. So we got to figure out how to make it work. Hey, we're making a graphic. We're only allowed to use these three colors and whatever. And by constraining it, you focus more on the task than like the infinite possibilities you could face. So I would say if you're in that realm where you don't know, there's a lot of things to do, decide your constraints and your window, 2 years, we're going to attack this head on. And if it's really bad or X, Y, or Z happens, then we'll make another move. But there's probably a lot you can do to solve the problem without trying to balance every possible way to get around it, because that's where it gets overwhelming. And I don't think you truly think about creative ways to handle some problems.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense to me. I definitely experience that in my own ways when I feel like there's a lot of choices. Like you can get paralyzed by that, but if you kind of have a couple options you can go, and you have stuff that you just have to work around, well, you're gonna figure it out, or be more likely to. So, I love that. That's really good perspective here. And Matt, let's switch gears. You just led the charge on putting this confidence guide together for a lot of athletes that we work with, and I would love to hear, what what's in it, and talk more about this point. And I think it's something that comes up a lot. Like, I want to work on my confidence. I want to improve as an athlete. What did you see in that?
Well, one, it's something that I've worked on myself a ton. I think through I still play. And so I don't think confidence is something you just have or don't. It's not A or B. It's a skill. It's like, it's like you can be in shape or out of shape, like where you're training it. And confidence you can train and practice. And I think for me, learning how to be confident over time and deal with some, performance anxiety like everybody does. I've gotten more comfortable handling it, and I'm not perfect with it, but I've learned some ways to navigate through it. And I've been trying to teach that to a lot of players, athletes, um, because at the crux of it, you can be as skilled as you want, but if when you go to play, if you're not confident in your abilities, you're not gonna be able to access that skill and play, um, in a confident style. I heard this the other day and made a lot of sense to me. It's kind of like this confidence equation, which is confidence equals preparation less attachment to results. Which basically means how you become confident in anything is you do the work. Obviously, like confidence is earned, so you have to prepare. You can't just have a speech, never practice it, and expect to do well with it. So to have confidence, you prepare, but then you're not attached to the results. So your well-being, your sense of worth is not, I have to crush this speech. I have to win this game. I have to score 3 goals. Because if you're attached to the results, you're creating anxiety and pressure around things that you don't control. Like you winning the game is not in your control. You can impact the game, but the other team has a say too. There's players on the other team that are trying to score goals also. So just from a base foundational standpoint, it doesn't make sense to attach to results you can't control. But what you can do is focus fully on doing everything you can. And if you fully prepare and you know that no matter what happens, I've prepared and I'm going to be okay, well, then you don't have the weight and pressure of failure on you. And you put into it what you needed to, and you should be free to perform to the best of your ability.
I love that. It makes me now, like, I guess, like, a question on that would be, is that kind of the idea? Like, I always think about, I don't know if I'm gonna butcher it from Mark, but just the idea of, you know, the the less you the less you want something, the odds of it happening increase. Like, the more you want something, the odds of it happening decrease. Like, and I feel like in some of my own experience, and some guys I've played with, like, when you stop giving, a shit, honestly, sometimes, like, you play better. Like, is that what you're saying, where you're, like, less attached to the outcome to some degree?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, and I think it kind of goes into what we spoke about with the perfectionism with the Agassi stuff last week. Um, Like, look, my personal experience with this is I was really, really hard on myself mentally as a player growing up, because that's how I learned to have an edge. Like in my mental self-talk, I learned this early on and it helped me. It was like, you will not score on me, where it's like things I would say to myself. And I didn't get scored on that much when I was younger in high school, but like I didn't play it's very different when you get to, sometimes I did. I remember like Pat Kelly, who played, scored like 4 goals in me. And then I was like, well, he did. So what do I do now? And, and you get to college. And now that going into my 11th season in the professional lacrosse, I get scored on. Like, these guys are really good. And so there's this relationship to, like, it's more like I'm going to make it so hard for you to score on me. And if you do, good luck doing it again. And so it's this relationship I have with the process and myself, where it's, I'm going to do my job and I'm going to prepare. I'm going to be in shape. I'm going to understand you. I'm going to make it really hard. But I also have the ability to tip my cap to somebody else and be like, nice, do it again. And to me, I have such a healthier relationship with that now, that I don't think is, I used to think that would be like a weak mindset, to like be at all tolerant of like any type of failure. But I've realized that's extremely fragile because it's unrealistic. So when you do inevitably fail to some degree, if you want to call it failing, like, your foundational belief is just shaken entirely. So I think gripping onto unrealistic things, that gripping onto uncontrollables as if you control them, is a trap that a lot of people get into. Whereas I think keeping your house clean first, making sure that you do everything that you need to do. So it's not passive. You have to do what you need to do. You got to make sure you're in order with your tasks and all that. But then once you do that, you don't need to want or grip onto something that you can't control. You just got to do the best that you can at what you can do, which sounds obvious, but I think if you can get the right relationship there, it's incredibly freeing, because you don't hold yourself to an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, it's interesting as well because it kind of makes me think of, hey, what got you here won't get you there. You've gone through this journey, and I've seen a lot of it, like from high school to college to pro. You're still sustaining at this higher level. Now, like things you've learned, things that have also you've learned through experience, you've learned through working with different people along the way that have probably helped you at different times. It probably, for a younger athlete, it makes a lot of sense to basically be like, well, instead of going through that entire journey to then find out 15 years from now, like that's the right approach. You can give a younger athlete now like that idea of how they can think about it. But you can give them this phrase, which again makes a ton of sense, but they have to work at it. They have to prepare themselves physically. They have to, again, part of that, again, that's not just this given thing. Part of it is the preparation. Like, if you're not fully taking care of your body and learning how to prepare as a young athlete, like, that is a lot of the battle. Like, who has the discipline to do the stretching before, stay healthy on the field, not eat complete crap as a high school kid, like back to the sacrifices, right? So like and then you just have some kids that are just so naturally talented, and they don't have to do any of it. We all know those people, and we can moan about those people, but they're just freaks, and some of those freaks are the best athletes in the world. And but again, back to the 99%, like, a lot of people have to do everything possible in their control, and then they love it. They want it so bad. How do you detach from those outcomes and tip your cap and get back on the horse?
Yeah, I think well, there's a lot to that, but there's one piece that I've really, like, personally liked a lot, and I think has kind of helped me, and it's kind of just getting a better understanding of like what nerves and anxiety really are. And also, to your earlier point of like giving people answers. So I heard somebody say, look, if everybody could just learn something or hear something and apply it, then we could all just read the 5 best philosophy textbooks out there and just be the wisest people in the world. But that's not how it works, because philosophy, like all of this stuff, meets you where you are. Like, you can hear it You can hear it over 20 years and it's going to meet you where you are at that point. So I get that. Not every, like, I don't expect to tell this to a 13-year-old. Like, it took me years to really relate to this better. But one of the things that helped me a lot was understanding that, like, the pregame butterfly feeling that maybe some people don't get it, but I would imagine 90+% of people do, where you feel anxious for tryouts, for tournament, whatever, your playoff game. Like, I get it before every game, always have. I had friends in high school that would throw up before freshman football games because they just always had it so bad. But understanding that it's a really natural, like, physiological response that people have, and that it's not going anywhere most likely. And so relating to it. And so when that feeling comes, one, you knew it was coming because, hey, it shows up before every game. It's just like you sweat when you get hot. Like, before a game, you feel those butterflies. It's just part of the experience. So when you feel it, there's this phrase I like that's like, name it to tame it, which is where you, like, notice, like, oh, hey, there's the butterflies, or there's the nerves, there's whatever you want to call it. And you know it and you relate to it. And it's not this, like, oh no, I'm nervous, like, oh crap, I feel anxious. It's, oh, that's part of this. I know once I get going, that once I get the first hit, the first pass, the first sweat broken, like, it's going to go away and we're in it. So, like, I'll just navigate through this feeling like I do every game for 60 minutes prior, and we're good. Now, it doesn't make the feeling go away, but it definitely changes, like, how you relate to it and whether or not you spiral off it, or it's like, oh, here it is again. It's always going to be here, a little shaky. Okay, we're good. I got my plan for it. And to me, that's helped me a lot because it just made me normalize this experience I've had. I played indoor and was playing 20 indoor games and then 15 outdoor games a year. It's 35 games a year. That's 35 weekends a year. I'd be like, crap, this feeling's back. Like, I got to figure this one out.
Yeah. No, I love that. When I heard you say a couple weeks ago, you're not removing the feeling, but you're getting more comfortable with, like, your relationship with it and how you navigate it. It made me actually give that advice recently relative to, like, the recruiting process, but also confidence in the recruiting process. Like, a big word everyone loves to throw around is the idea of FOMO, fear of missing out, as it pertains to recruiting. Giving the advice, hey, don't buy into the FOMO, don't do that, it's going to be there. It's
It's
there.
gonna be,
It's
yeah,
built in. It's built into the system, just like, hey, like, a lot of times, like, you're playing a game you really care about, like, nerves are built in, telling me, hey, don't be nervous. Like, you've worked so hard. It's like, well, I'm still pretty
I'm still
freaking
nervous.
nervous.
Yeah,
Like, I know I'm prepared. Like, I've shot a million times. Like, I'm still nervous. Like, it's to your
yeah,
point of, how do I work on my relationship with this thing? But again, it makes me think of the same thing with the FOMO. Like, you're gonna have it. It's gonna come up. Can you find your way to handle that, work through that as a family? Like, what are your responses to that? And, like, falling back on your process. But then, hey, like, some things are out of your control. North Carolina might not have that lefty attack spot. What do you do? Like, you're that's out of your control. You have to detach some of that emotion around that outcome and find the one that does work, that does fit, and when people talk about the right fit. So it's kind of cool to see I think the on field also have a lot of parallels to the off field of a lot of the things that we're talking about here.
yeah. One of the phrases that I heard a while ago that helped kind of with the same meta theme was, courageous people still feel fear. They just don't let the fear keep them from acting anyways. So it's not that the fear goes away. The fear is still there, but fear shows up and then you still have a choice. Do you do it or not? Right? And then over time, if you do it, you train yourself that whatever you want to call that fear, you train yourself that that's just a feeling that comes, but it doesn't have to go hand in hand with making the decision that it wants you to make. So you're training like a proactive thought decision, not fully based off the emotion, but emotion space, and you choose how to respond versus just letting the emotion drive you to the first gut response it makes you want to do, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're doing a great job of pulling on these quotes and these sayings. I feel like that's a
Dude,
skill that you've built over time.
I'm such a nerd. I like I'm such a nerd. I read too much. I listen to podcasts. I take notes. Like I'm just a nerd.
I know you don't look it, but you're a lot smarter than people would probably give you credit for.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for telling me I look dumb. I think one thing, Deemer, is as we wrap up here is like a lot of this stuff is just, there's not a one fit solution for it, but you and I, like, we know our experiences as players and as coaches and as people we've worked with. So like, I know that I'm always working through this, and my goal really with a lot of it is just to give some people some ideas. I'd recommend experimenting with your own experiences with these problems or these, fears, anxieties, etc. Like there's a lot of ways to you're not victim to circumstance with all of this stuff. Like confidence can be trained. You can learn how to better handle nerves and anxiety and performance, whether that's on your own or working with somebody. I think people assume some of that stuff can't be trained, but I believe the mental skills are just like the physical skills that you can find tools, practice them, and it really does help.
Yeah, and I think tying this whole episode together, back to what we do, I think we also exist to help players and families and coaches solve problems, like bring solutions to the table of things that they're going through. Obviously, drawing on our experiences as players, but also as coaches, what we're experiencing as we've been running FCL for 8 years. And so, again, like whether that's shooting, defensive footwork, recruiting, training, like those are all things that I think we've loved learning more about and doing. So, again, like we appreciate those who are tuning in and listening, and if we can be of help, feel free to check out our website at firstclasslax.com. And otherwise, looking forward to a great episodes coming up. And thanks for a great session, Matt.
All right, Deemer. We'll get some guests on in the future. Don't worry, everyone.